بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والعاقبة للمتقين والصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين أما بعد فقد قال الله تعالى في القرآن المجيد والفرقان الحميد إنا بلوناهم كما بلونا أصحاب الجنة إذ أقسموا ليصرمنها مصبحين ولا يستثنون صدق الله العظيم إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما
اللهم صل على سيدنا مولانا محمد
وعلى آل سيدنا
صلاة وسلاما عليك يا رسول الله يا حبيب الله
الصلاة والسلام عليك يا سيدي يا رسول الله وعلى آلك وأصحابك يا سيدي يا حبيب الله. Respected elders, brothers in Islam, what I have just read to you is two verses from Surah Qalam, from the 29th surah. Surah Qalam is the chapter which follows the famous Surah Al-Mulk, Tabarak al-Ladhi biyadihi al-Mulk. And the two verses that I have read commences a story that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions regarding a garden, regarding a father and his three sons. And the story itself takes up about 16 or 17 verses. And today, inshallah ta'ala, what I would like to do very briefly is to give you an idea, the highlights and the basic executive summary, you could say, of this beautiful story from the Holy Quran. The best stories are from the Holy Quran. By virtue of the fact that it is mentioned in the Holy Quran, you know it happened. You know that whatever Allah says did happen on this earth. So remember that point. And the second point, because it's from the Quran, the story has morals and lessons for it. The story is timeless. That this could have happened 3,000 years ago, 5,000 years ago. But believe me, any story from the Holy Quran, if you read it properly, and if you read beneath the lines in the correct manner, then you will find lessons in this day and age as well. And certainly, when I finish the story, and you can make your own mind up, I am sure that when I have finished the story, if you reflect on it tonight and tomorrow, you will come across maybe 3-4 examples that you have seen in your lifetime, or have read in the news, which goes back to the story basically. And I certainly will mention one which is in the newspapers right now. The story is about a pious man who worked as a farmer. He had some land and he looked after the land, and he was a pious man who also praised Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He had 3 sons. He worked hard and he looked after his family. He was a man of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He knew that everything he had in terms of the land and the agriculture and the crops was from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Each and every year there would be a date in the farming calendar, you could say, which in Arabic we call Yawm al-Hisad. It's the day of cultivation, you could say, the day of crops, where you cut the crops and then you actually take it to the market and take some profit from it. Each and every year, this pious man, he would make it very publicly known that a share of his crops and agriculture would go to the poor and needy, to the miskeen and the fuqara of the town. The poor and needy of that town knew that. They loved him because of it. That day of cultivation would come. Happily, the pious man would take the miskeens, he would take the fuqara, he would take the poor people. Come to the land. This is my land, this is my agriculture, but certainly I will give you a share of it as well. You have a haqq to this as well. It is my duty as a servant of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to look after you as well. He became known for this, he became famous for this. This is perhaps the reason why he was forgiven by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when he eventually died. When he died, his sons took over the land, and straight away these 3 sons, they began to, you could say, stamp their own authority. They had a different idea about how to go about this simple business. And perhaps they were not as guided as their father was in this actual matter. The first thing they did was to stop the share that their father used to give to the poor and needy. This small hissa that on the day of cultivation would go to the needy and poor people of the town, the 3 sons, they thought to themselves that this is a waste. This is a waste of precious resources. This is our profit. Why are we giving it to these poor and needy people? We have overheads to watch out for. We have other costs. We have to optimize our profit. We have to have a perfect business model. And giving money to the poor and needy from our well-earned wealth is not part of that business model. So the first thing they decided that we are not going to give any money to the poor and needy. When the day of cultivation came, they were full of pride and arrogance. What did they say? They said that we are going to go to the crops, to the land where we are, and without fail we will take the crops for ourselves. when they talked about this, they did not say inshallah. They were boastful and prideful about this. And they said, we're going to go tomorrow and we'll take all of the crops for ourselves. Moreover, because they said that there's going to be no share for the poor and needy, they actually began to plan that how are we going to take the crops without the poor and needy turning up. Because each and every year until now, it has almost become a tradition that our father would come to the fields, the poor and the needy would follow him. How are we going to avoid the poor and needy coming to our fields? We don't want them there. One of them decided and had a plan and said, when we will go secretly at night or first thing in the morning. First thing on the morning, when there's hardly any daylight, we will cut the crops so that no poor and needy person sees us. We'll keep it all for ourselves. We won't have any trouble with this whatsoever. They left that morning. You could hardly see a thing. It was Fajr time, you could say. What they didn't realize that very night, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent down a punishment which burnt their land and no one else's land. فَأَصْبَحَتْ قَصَّرِينَ, the word in the Quran. Qassarin, the impression I get is totally burnt in black. Sometimes when you see on TV, you might see fires in forest fires. And the remains is horrible, it's totally black and it's steaming. You get the impression that this is exactly what happened to their land. They woke up in the morning with a big smile on their face, thinking that we are going to take the crops and we are going to take it for ourselves. As soon as they got there, they saw the land was barren and completely burnt. What was the first reaction? Allahu Akbar. The first reaction was, قَالُوا إِنَّا لَضَالُّونَ. It is the darkness of the night and the early light of the morning. We have taken the wrong path. This is not really our land. Our land was full of green crops. This is all burnt. We've taken the wrong path. When they looked a bit closer, then they realized that this is our land. But somehow it is burnt completely. Slowly and slowly they realized it was their own land. The cleverest of the three, he realized why this had happened, and he realized that this was really a punishment from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And what did he say? The words are, قَالَ أَوْسَطُهُمْ أَلَمْ أَقُلْ لَكُمْ لَوْلَا تُسَبِّحُونَ. The middle one, meaning the intelligent one of them, said, did I not say that we should do the tasbih of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? This is the reason why the punishment has come. When they eventually realized that this is the reason why the punishment has come, because we denied the poor and needy their rights. In the words of the Holy Quran, they all repented and they asked forgiveness for their mistakes. عَسَىٰ قَالُوا يَا وَيْلَنَا إِنَّا كُنَّا طَاغِينَ عَسَىٰ رَبُّنَا أَن يُبْدِلَنَا خَيْرًا مِنْهَا إِنَّا إِلَىٰ رَبِّنَا رَاغِبُونَ. That we are returning to our Lord. Alhamdulillah, at least they realized their mistake afterwards. But the lesson is very clear for us that when it comes to the poor and needy, you should give the right to them. The other morals of the story, very briefly. Number one, our parents are usually right, we are usually wrong. These three sons, the impression you get is they put, our father, he is old school. Our father doesn't know what a good business model is. In modern day, our father doesn't know what it's like growing up in 21st century Britain. Our parents don't know about the digital age. Our parents don't know about marriage and the things and loves and relationship and all of these things. They grew up in India and Pakistan. Alright, one thing, your parents, they have lived, they know about life. You haven't lived yet. Your parents know best most of the time. I would say 99% of the time. So for our youngsters in particular, do not ever think that my father has got it wrong. Most of the time, you have got it wrong. And in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes it very clear that in this case here, the children thought they had got it right. In reality, it was the father that had got it right. Number two, giving zakah and sadaqah to the poor, it preserves your wealth. It protects it. It does not waste it. It increases it. It brings barakah in it. In fact, in the words of our Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, he said, إِنَّمَا تُرْزَقُونَ بِدُعَفَائِكُمْ. The only reason you have rizq is thanks to the poor people in your community. Unki wajah se. Because of their du'as, because of their existence and because of their sincerity. As soon as you turn your back away from the poor, wait for your destruction. It is the end of you. They are the means of your sustenance. Our Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, he loved the poor. He had all of the time in the poor. He wanted to live like the poor. He wanted to die like the poor. In his du'as, he said, I want to be resurrected with the poor. This is the attitude we have. As soon as you neglect the poor and you think they are not needy, you will only look after the rich. That is your destruction. Wallahi Azim, and this is my own thought, it's not the thought of anybody else's. But if the West is going to crumble, if the West as a civilization is going to deteriorate and dissipate in front of our eyes, it's because of what they are doing to the poor and needy. It is what they are doing to the people who are the, you could say, underclass of society, for the disabled, for those people who are poor and cannot even afford basic medicine. The way that they are being treated right now, it will lead to the destruction of the West. You think that this Quranic story is outdated? Sir Philip Green is in the papers right now. Sir Philip Green is a billionaire, he is a UK billionaire. Until recently, he was much respected by all governments. In fact, he had been given a knighthood by the United Kingdom government. He bought a shop store, BHS. He bought it, and basically all he did was, is that from this company, once he became the owner, in simple terms, he took all of the pension pot out, a good £500 million. Or to put it another way, he took the right of the needy. Once he had taken that, and he had done it legally, there was a loophole which allowed him to do so. What did he do? He put the company back onto the market for £1. Or to put it another way, he had taken the haq of the poor for himself and said, you lot can drop now. These stories are being played out right in front of us. What will happen to Sir Philip Green? I have iman in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that the same thing will happen to Sir Philip Green, what happened to the land of these three sons. It is in fact happening. If you read the papers and see how much bestie and how much difficulty he is in, it is being played out right in front of us. Never deny the haqq of the poor. Do not ever think that this is an unneeded overhead. Ensure that there is a small amount, even a small standing order, that is going to the poor and needy. If you have poor and needy back home in India and Pakistan and Bangladesh, send them money. Do not ever think to yourself, it's going to be wasted, or they're not going to appreciate it, or they're not going to thank you for it. Believe me, it's the way of preserving yourself here in the United Kingdom. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala enable us all to learn from this beautiful story from the Holy Quran. Ameen. Wa ma alayna illa al-balagh al-mubin. Allahumma salli ala sayyidina wa mawlana Muhammad وعلى آل سيدنا ومولانا محمد وبارك وسلم وسلم عليه. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. اللهم أحيني مسكينا وأمتني مسكينا واحشرني في زمرة المساكين. وصلى الله تعالى على خير خلقه ونور عرشه محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. آمين برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين.